Hello Internet, Taliesin here, and today we are talking World of Warcraft Dragonflight patch 10.1 Embers of Neltharion. We are talking the opening cinematic of the patch released by Blizzard on their YouTube channel a day or two ago. So we are talking the continuing baddiness of the best baddies WoW has had in ages, the Primal Incarnates. They rock. They are cool. They are lit. The opening of the Zaraleck Caverns, the manipulation of the Drakthir of the Sundered Flame, the sacrifice of Firakk, and the reveal of the big master plan. This is full of so much good stuff, and it's an awesome cinematic in its own right too. So as usual, this video is going to be half cinematic deep dive analysis, half speculation about some of the important lore points the clip raises. And as usual, if you haven't watched Opening the Way yet, then this video will be a terrible way to do it, because this is not a reaction video, okay? We're going to be stopping and starting and skipping bits and talking all over the top and generally just having a splendid nerdy time. So if that sounds like your kind of thing, join us as we ask, who is the real leader of the Incarnates? And what is the Aspect's dark nightmare? Okay, go, 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 go. We start with this establishing shot of Valdrakken, the capital of the Dragonflight expansion, a site that is now super familiar to all of us, as seen from the Timberstep Outpost, a place that obviously exists in-game. We go there in questing, and one of the reasons this is such a perfect opening location for this cinematic is because before now, all of the real danger of Dragonflight, all of our encounters with the Incarnates so far, have happened deep in the heart of a mountain prison, or on an abandoned separate island off the coast, meaning that this next stop on the Incarnate Evil World Tour suddenly brings all that danger and urgency right home. This is where most of us are when we log onto the game every day. Before now, we have adventured out to find the baddies. This is the baddies coming to our house. When our boy Shaquille is doing his patrol and looks up into the night sky to see a repeat of the image used in the Return to the Forbidden Reach cinematic, the three Incarnates swooping overhead almost silently but dominating the sky. That sense of scale heightened by their distance and supposed complete unconcern with everything below them. I really like that description of the Forbidden Reach patch as being kind of like a pre-patch to 10.1, and in many ways these two cinematics can be seen as companion pieces because they reference each other a lot, whilst at the same time Opening the Way directly addresses some questions raised by its predecessor. So in Return to the Forbidden Reach, the Incarnates supposedly don't notice Sarkareth and the Sundered Flame hiding amongst the trees below. In this one, Shaquille is not so lucky. Things I really love about this discovery sequence, the way that the Incarnates disappear out of view, and then there's this flash of light. We know it's because they're changing into their visage forms, not because they've just, flown into a mountain and the expansion's over. But I think it really makes us feel like we've witnessed like a shooting star or a meteorite crashing to Earth, like an astrological event, solidifying this idea that the Incarnates are a force of nature, unknowable, unstoppable, and also maybe a little bit of foreshadowing of Void stuff later on, maybe. And the tension build up here as our centaur buddy goes to investigate is great too. This whole sequence reminds me of the 8.2 Terror of Darkshore cinematic, using horror techniques to signal that even though Shaquille is the one probing into the woods and investigating, he is very much the prey in this scenario, not the hunter. Those horror techniques are used brilliantly as we get our first view of best baddie and indeed character ever made in any game, Firakk, standing with his back to our hero like any classic horror monster. The scary music sting letting us know that what we see here is something to be very afraid of indeed. And you can tell poor old Shaquille can't hear that music because he doesn't have that warning, and indeed does something a little bit stupid. Brave, I meant to say brave.
Halt! You trespass in Shakar territory! Explain what you are doing here.
I love that complete backtrack from our boy as the elemental flame starts to envelop Fyrakk's body, and he finally realizes that what he is up against here is like nothing he's ever seen before, and frankly, way above his pay grade. I would argue he might initially have come to that conclusion when he saw the 3 monster dragons flying this way, but you know, horse brains are pretty small. I'm not going to be judgmental about it. He's very brave until he's not. And look, I know Fyrakk always looks like he's grinning with glee, but he always seems to be grinning that little bit more when he's about to roast some mofo, and that's absolutely the case here. In fact, we find out at the start of the 10.1 questing that Shaquille is literally reduced to a pile of smoldering ash in this moment. You'll be pleased to note that he also gets a funeral, though. I also love that both Fyrakk and Shaquille are voiced by Matt Mercer, so he smokes himself in this cinematic. It's cute. I also genuinely appreciate the exaggerated comedy nonchalance they give Fyrakk here too.
Can we get on with it? You said we'd find it here.
We have.
Blowing the flame off his hand and shrugging his shoulders, playing the short attention span psycho role that he fills in this group to perfection. I feel like in WoW recently, all of the baddies from Zovaal to Sylvanas, back through the Legion, Garrosh, Deathwing, Arthas, man, they are awesome or not to various degrees, but they are all just so serious. Fyrakk is just some dude who really enjoys shit up, and I love him for that. I needed that, you know? And then we get some cool baddie plan explaining.
From what I have transcribed, Neltharion had a hidden path to Aberrus, just below this ridge.
Sealed beneath earth and water, undisturbed for thousands of years.
Then let us open the way.
With Vyranoth having now cracked the code of the magic laser nap the murder gang found on the Forbidden Reach and worked out Neltharion's back way into Aberrus, the low-key best ore farming and chillest fishing spot on the map. Sorry. And it being under a bunch of earth and water, not the securest defense against a couple of earth and water incarnates. Little side note here, I've seen a lot of talk online about how in this cinematic, Ice Lady maybe comes across like she's the leader of this primalist gang. After all, she works out where the entrance is. She's the one that starts busting the way through, starting by freezing the tree on the island that some have taken as foreshadowing what might happen to any new world tree that may or may not appear at some point. There's the fact that the primalist future phase, as in what the world would look like if the primalists win, is covered in ice and snow. And it's true, Vyranoth seems incredibly assured and confident and capable, and you know, it's quite possible that she could end up being the bigger threat in the end, but it's also quite clear that when push comes to shove, if there is an order to be given in this cinematic, and there's a couple, then it is always Iridikron giving them.
Firakk, you will feast upon the elemental power below. Come, we have much to do.
Do not be fooled that Iridikron is keeping his cards close to his chest. I mean, all the incarnates have such tiny arms, that's the only place they really can keep them, sure. Be afraid that we haven't seen him even really try yet, you know? But yeah, it is the Earth Primal that tells Fyrakk,
You will feast upon the elemental power below. Wake the elders from their slumber and incinerate any who stand in our way.
to fill his boots and go crazy down there in what we know from the PTR and like all of the 10.1 preview literature is Shadow Flame. And in Iridikron's words, wake the elders slumbering beneath. And again, we know from what we know of 10.1 that it's the ancient OG Jaredin that he's talking about there. Something I really like about the 10.1 story campaign, and this isn't really a spoiler, it very much plays into the idea of the ancient Jaredin in Zaraleck Caverns being master dragon hunters first and foremost. These guys are earth giants with special skills when it comes to killing the aspects and their forces specifically. And also they're stuffed full of thousands of years worth of Shadow Flame now too, so there's that. And the joy of Firakk to be let off the leash here and go wild in Shadow Flame frenzy is palpable. There is real relish in his voice as he leaps off the ledge like kids doing bombs into the swimming pool. visage to fireball to comet to explosion to proto-drake transformation is so ludicrously over the top, but it gives you this sense of just how excited he is to do some serious incinerating on his boss's orders. And it is important that we, the audience, get a sense of that childlike joy, not just because it's fun, but because I've got a feeling it's pretty important to the story, because I think Iridikron may be basically sacrificing Firakk here. The dynamic between the three surviving incarnates is interesting, and it definitely seems like Vyranoth is privy to the overall plan as well as to the individual steps of it a lot more than Firakk is. Probably in part, in fairness, because Firakk doesn't give a shit, but that does put him outside the other more thoughtful two in a way that could potentially leave him vulnerable to being used a bit or punished a bit for his lack of patience. And I think we see that here. He is predictably excited to cause mayhem under the Dragon Isles, but I don't think he knows or cares why Iridikron has asked him to do that. And we will come back to this, but there seems to be a very specific reason indeed. But for now, it's all about the action set piece of setting up the immediate action of 10.1, the opening of the way to Aberrus. That kind of meteorite imagery played on again as Firakk crashes into the mountainside here, resembling a heavenly body burning through the Earth's atmosphere, as the Primal Incarnates get ready for re-entry into the caverns.
Exquisite. In his wake, the Drakthir will succumb to the temptation of Aberrus and unleash the aspect's darkest nightmares.
Come. We have much to do. Let the children of Neltharion claim their birthright.
Vyranoth reveals here that the plan is to let Sarkareth and the Sundered Flame delve into Aberrus, become corrupted, and release the Aspect's darkest nightmare. And obviously there's a number of things to unpack there, but firstly, this reveal that the Incarnates, or Vyranoth and Iridikron, were actually absolutely aware that the Sundered Flame were on their tail from the very start. The Forbidden Reach cinematic showed us the action very much through the eyes of Sarkareth, and it seemed like the Drakthir had gone unnoticed while they eavesdropped on the Incarnate plans to find Aberrus and decided to hijack it themselves. But now we know that just as the Incarnates didn't miss poor innocent slightly stupid Shaquille below them today, they didn't miss the Sundered Flame skulking around on the Forbidden Reach either. Now we know that the dialogue in the Forbidden Reach cinematic that was so thick with exposition was at least in part for the benefit of those Drakthir who they knew were listening in and who they know are hiding out watching Firakk bust open the gate to Aberrus now. The Sundered Flame think they're being incredibly clever, but they have been specifically led here to do the dirty work for the Incarnates. In this very last shot of the cinematic, you can absolutely imagine Iridikron and Vyranoth giggling to each other as they walk away like, are they looking? Are they looking? Yeah, they're looking. I've talked about this on the second channel, but one of the reasons I really like Iridikron as a big bad is because he's actually a lot more cautious than your average WoW antagonist. He knows his enemies, me, are total badasses, and that he can't just brute force his way through us, that we need to be treated with respect and outmaneuvered. And using the Sundered Flame and their thirst for Neltharion's power that they see as their legacy to take on much of the risk for them down in Aberrus is a great example of that caution, as is using Firakk as a battering ram. Now, I said earlier that Iridikron might be sacrificing Fire Legend here, and that might not be strictly true. It's quite possible that both of the remaining Incarnates think that once imbued with Shadow Flame, and once Sarkareth has released the Aspect's darkest nightmare, more on that later, that then all threats will be dealt with and Firakk will just be fine and come back to join the gang. I don't know. I'm not sure this is the final step of Iridikron's plan, and I just get the feeling that what we are seeing here is the first indication that the Earth Incarnate is willing to put his kin in harm's way for the greater good. I think we will kill Firakk in 10.1, probably eventually in the Mega Dungeon. And I think the way Iridikron sees that is probably like, it would be great if he didn't die, but totally worth it if he does. I feel like this is our first sign that Iridikron isn't all about the family in that way. If Firakk does get snuffed out in the dungeon, that would be a shame, obviously, because he's glorious, but as long as he gets a good send-off where we really get to enjoy him, I'm down. I said before, I'd be okay with him being a dungeon boss if he was like 4 separate boss fights in that dungeon. Make it a real special event, you know? He's worth it. Which just leaves the last remaining question, the most exciting question. Who or what are the aspect's darkest nightmares that Vyranoth refers to? The nightmares that Sarkareth and his buddies will succumb to the temptations of before unleashing. Well, there is one very obvious and one not so obvious answer to that, isn't there? The obvious answer is, of course, the old gods. We know that the final fight of the raid is against a void-corrupted Sarkareth, who opens portals to the void and has a bunch of void shit pour through in the boss room that has the broken chains of a previously occupied old god prison underneath it, and a very interesting stained glass window that definitely looks like it could be Yashiraj, or possibly one of those new as in previously unknown, still very old gods mentioned in the Forbidden Reach books. Probably linking a ton of our own videos on screen and in the description right now for you to check out on those subjects. Check them out. There is no doubt that voidy stuff is a hugely important part of Aberrus. That Neltharion was corrupted while building Aberrus, and probably by whatever was in that now abandoned old god prison in Aberrus, so it would be insane to rule that out. There's also that old god habit of trying to corrupt the Emerald Dream, where it definitely looks like one of Dragonflight's future patches will be set. And of course, the corrupted Emerald Dream is called the Nightmare. It all seems to line up pretty well, doesn't it? But you know, when I hear the aspect's darkest nightmare, I can't help but think of something else. I can't help but think of the infinite Dragonflight. Their photo-negative appearance and the fact that they literally are bronze dragons and Nosdormu in the future means that they are much more specifically the Aspect's dark nightmare. And we know we've got to be seeing some infinite dragon action happening in this expansion, right? And we suspect that Murazond is created through old god influence. Nosdormu has said in the past that he thinks N'Zoth is to blame, but honestly, for a guy that can see everything that has ever happened or will happen in all of time, Nosdormu is wrong or surprised by like a lot of stuff. And by a lot of stuff, I mean literally everything. Like everything that ever happens appears to be a massive shock to this guy. And it's like, dude, come on, do your job. Oh, but the sands of time are just so swirly in this bit of time. It's so hard. So currently I am leaning towards whatever is unleashed at the end of Aberrus, leading to infinite Dragonflight shenanigans, to be honest. And I think it is because of how Vyranoth calls it specifically the Aspect's darkest nightmare, as opposed to, say, Azeroth's darkest nightmare or whatever. But you know what? If it is specifically the Aspect's darkest nightmare, then Galakrond could fit that description too. The first massive threat that they all fought together. And I also know that I'm reading too much into that for sure, but it's fun, okay? But what do you think? What is the dark nightmare Vyranoth refers to? What is the wider plan that Earthboy and Ice Girl are off to see to while we deal with Firakk and the Sundered Flame and the Void in Aberrus? How many other characters did Matt Mercer voice in this cinematic that I've just missed? And what do you think of the storytelling in Dragonflight so far? Personally, I love how closely this cinematic followed on from the Forbidden Reach one, with the effect that it is able to continue the story of that cutscene almost directly. Pacing of this expansion's narrative just feels really awesome so far. I'm incredibly into the baddies and their plan, and it really feels like the story is kicking well and truly into gear this patch, with the stakes being raised considerably. But hey, maybe I'm completely wrong and WoW sucks dead game. Let us know in the comments below. And thanks for joining us today. If you like this video, don't thank us, thank our patrons who give their actual real life money to make all of our work happen. And no joke, patrons, thank you, because without you, there would be a whole lot less Taliesin and Evitel. If you didn't like it, downvote the shit out of it. Remember, my name is Matt Mercer. No, my name is Taliesin, from me and Evitel and everyone else. Until next time, cheerio.